Good morning. The next chapter is Arete and Aidos. Arete, which is deliberate action made with either virtue or excellence, and Aidos, which is the ethical consciousness caused by either shame or honor. Arete comes into play when Antigone chooses to bury the body of Polynices because she deliberately chooses to do so because she honestly believes that what she's doing is right and justified. And Aidos comes in when Ismene is reluctant and ultimately chooses not to help Antigone bury Polynices because A, she doesn't want to break the law, and because B, she doesn't want to assume to know what the gods want people to do. Later on in this chapter, Antigone's in court and he's telling his people how they're so loyal that they would never even think to break his edict, and lo and behold, a messenger comes in saying that the body of Polynices has been buried and his edict and Creon's edict has been broken, which upsets Creon, and he sends the messenger out outraged, which leads to the next chapter, dissoi logoi, or double speech, also all knowledge being represented and spoken for. And in this chapter, dissoi logoi happens when first the messenger that said that he saw Polynices' buried body brings in Antigone into court before Creon, and Antigone is brought in for an interrogation and arrest. And dissoi logoi comes in when Antigone speaks her part, and she says how she should be justified in burying her brother because he's family, and she should have every right to bury her family, and Creon defends his right as king to enforce his civil law because as a citizen, Antigone should have to follow it. And then in the later on in this chapter, Ismene comes in and she's begging Creon to let her and Antigone go because initially she had taken the blame also, but then Creon had condemned only Antigone to death, and he just gets frustrated and sends them both away. And then later on in this chapter, Haemon finds out that Antigone has been sentenced to death, and he goes to speak with Creon about it, which leads to our next chapter, theos, or true and ultimate good, and the overarching deity. In this chapter, Tiresias is brought in with a boy, and he acts as the messenger of God, particularly the messenger of Apollo, and he acts as theos because he is the conduit of the gods, and he tells the people on earth what gods want or what they're going to do, but he does not take any credit for anything that happens because of what he says, because he knows that it's the god's will and not his own. And also, Arete takes place with Tiresias. Arete, which is paranoia or insanity linked with daemon and hubris. And in this chapter, Creon accuses Tiresias of being a prophet for pay because he doesn't like that Tiresias said that he's wrong and that Antigone should not be killed and that Polynices should be buried because he believes that he's the king and he likes to be right. So he insults Tiresias, and Tiresias tells him the true prophecy, which is Creon will suffer, which leads to peripetia, and that's the reversal. Because Creon didn't choose to listen to Tiresias, he sends Antigone into a cave to rot away and die, and eventually Haemon comes over and he dies with Antigone, which is a reversal because that leads to the suicide of his mother, which leads to the suffering of Creon, wherein Creon originally wanted Polynices to suffer even in death. Polynices' ignominy caused Ismene suffering, caused Antigone suffering, caused Haemon suffering because he did not have a fiancé anymore, so he killed himself. So his mom and Creon's wife killed herself and left Creon just devastated. So that is the peripetia. Thank you, and I'm in Hawaii.